KUAM TV8, first on Guam.
This coverage is made possible by our friends at Burger King, ITNE, and the Guam Visitors Bureau.
Good morning, Guam and Guamanians all over the world. Buenas and Hafa from the KUAM studios in Harmon. I'm Jason Salas. Viva Liberation! It is the 79th time our island has celebrated perhaps our most cherished holiday, and it is a wonderful day today. We're glad to have you along for the ride with us. Welcome to our special coverage of our island's Liberation Day Unified Memorial. Now, a special ceremony is just about to begin downtown in our island's capital of Hagåtña. My colleague Nick Delgado is standing by, and he can't wait to bring you what is happening at the Guam Museum stage where we celebrate the gift of liberation. Let's go now live downtown to Nick, who has much more.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 79th
Jason, the survivors, their families, and many more who want to spend today remembering are doing just that. It's the 79th Guam Liberation Day Unified Memorial getting ready to begin. It will include a flyover from our military, a special wreath laying, the event coming together as many of the memorial sites across the island were impacted by Typhoon Mawar. This, which really brought a lot of uncertainty for this year's celebration. And the one thing that is certain, it is happening right here. Let's give you a look now at the event.
No one could have imagined 79 years ago. We stand in awe and admiration for those that have sacrificed to keep the spirit of the tomorrow alive. There is nothing we can say or do that will bring back our loved ones that we lost during the occupation of Guam. There is no ceremony that will ever completely do justice to their memories. There is no way we would be able to walk in their shoes, but as we celebrate Liberation Day, we gather as a people of all races and creeds to let the survivors of our occupation and their families know that they are not alone. As we reflect on where we came from 79 years ago, we offer our deepest gratitude to those whose service and sacrifice have made our peace and freedom possible. Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we ask those of you that can please rise and direct your attention to the colors presented by the members of the Guam Police Department Color Guard. The singing of the national anthem and Guam hymn will be by Dr. John Rivera and Mrs. Abigail Rivera, accompanied by the Guam Territorial Band, the official band of Guam under the director of Bandmaster Jessica Pangilinan.
samoru ut itanonta hantai matunan yagitoru ilungat para iomra para gloria abiba islasen para honra, para gloria, aviva islasen para toru y tiempo y paz para hita janggil langit na bendición. Contra peligro nathan sa fuhan Diyos protehis lanwa. Contra peligro nathan sa fuhan Diyos protehis lanwa.
Thank you, Dr. and Mrs. Rivera. You may all be seated. Joining us today for this historic event, we have leaders from all sectors of government and the military, as well as our foreign government representatives. We ask that you please hold your applause. The Honorable Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero, Magahagan Guahan, Governor of Guam. Attorney Jeffrey A. Cook, First Gentleman of Guam. The Honorable Joshua F. Tenorio, Segundo Magalahan Guahan, Lieutenant Governor of Guam. The Honorable Therese M. Terlahi, Speaker and Senators of the 37th Guam Legislature. The Honorable F. Philip Carbolito, Justice, Supreme Court of Guam. The Honorable Jesse L.G. Alec, President of the Mayor's Council of Guam and Mayor of PT. All mayors, vice mayors, and executive director of the Mayor's Council of Guam. The Honorable Benjamin J.F. Cruz, Public Auditor, OPA. Mr. Noel Enriquez, Civilian Aide to the Secretary of the Army. Brigadier General Michael Cruz, the Adjutant General. Command Sergeant Major Kelso Leonin, Command Senior Enlisted Leader, both from the Guam National Guard. Rear Admiral Gregory C. Huffman, Commander, Joint Region Marianas. Commander Master Chief William Cody Webster. Brigadier General Thomas B. Polensky, Commander, 36th Wing. Colonel Larry Fenner Jr., Vice Commander. Chief Master Sergeant Nicholas Taylor. Colonel Ernest Govea, Commanding Officer, Marine Corps Base Camp Blas. Master Gunnery Sergeant Brian Burgess, Acting Command Senior Enlisted Leader. Captain Nicholas Simmons, Commander, U.S. Coast Guard Forces, Micronesia, Sector Guam. Captain Michael Luckett, Commanding Officer, Naval Base Guam. CMC Adam Eaker. Captain David Barrows, Commanding Officer, U.S. Naval Hospital, Guam. The Honorable Rosario Lemqui, Head of Post, Philippines. The Honorable Adelina K. Jose, Consul General, Palau. The Honorable Rumiko Ishigami, Consul General, Japan. The Honorable Kim N. Cook, Head of Mission, Republic of Korea. Major General Reginald G. A. Neal, Deputy Commanding General, Army National Guard. Director General Paul Chen, TECO. Former elected and island leaders. And returning World War II veteran Irvin Ward. Paranaqui City Barangay Captain's official delegation led by Congressman, 1st District of Paranaqui, Edwin L. Olivares. 79th Guam Liberation Royal Court led by Queen Malaya Rose R.B. Leon Guerrero of Santa Rita, Sumay. Guam Society of America Cherry Blossom, Princess Lourdes Puig. And distinguished guests joining us today. But most importantly, we welcome all our war survivors and our Manamku. We would like to welcome you all once again. Thank you for bestowing your presence among us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's once again keep it coming. Give a round of applause to all our distinguished guests. For those that can rise, please rise as we welcome the Reverend Polly Eric E. Forbes, Order Friars Minor, Capuchin Archdiocese of Agana, to deliver the blessing and responsu. If you can please follow along in your programs, we ask once again to rise for first the prayer for peace, followed by the prayer for all who died in the war.
Avanyelo tafan manodo pinenena para ipos gitoritano za umana fakpulat sa di igera gidza Ukraine zang gitodo ipumalo siya na lugar. Ginani tata zanilahingan zani Espiritu Santo. Tatan todo sam hagu fumatinas todo ifamagoon mo siha gi imahen mo zang gipinarehu mo at judaham lumii estinatono taimano I unlili'i, sintak kilo patak tata, simpoble pagyasaga. Lo en lugar como unuhan na familia, anay todos ham manielo. Ajudaham lumii ichelun mami, gimatan adjo na tao-tao ni tipareho kolot mami patrasan mami. No iham minahu para ihustisya, cosa kisinya inatunas hafalati. No iham corazon inasii, cosa kisinya intaka iinafa maulik. No iham no ikan na jineasi, cosa kisinya inajuda todos imangay necesidad. Ina igobernamento siya gitano para uma espia ipasifiko na remedio ni problema siya sa pulintingo na tisinya iinafuetsas munagwaha imagahit dyan mauk na pos. Asi iham pudihagas na isamomi anay ti inispia ipos dyan no iham ni minahgong mo gwinigitano ing gagagaw este gini ni Kristo isay na momi. Pagod ta responsuji todo iman matay tagigera. Umatuna si Diyos itata ni Sainata as Jesu Cristo itata ni Noosi, dani Diyos todo'y konsuelo, Hanon na ihip konsuelo gitodo siya itsanat sagota, zatagweno na hanon na ihip niina siya para takonsuela aju siya imansatsaga ni mismo konsuelo ni parisibi giningwija. Iinat pinmijo, asay na hahasujo girainommo. Asay na hahasujo girainommo. Isay na ipastotu, taja ufatta gijagwahu. Hana deskakan sa jugibet di mapastahi. Hakokko ni jugatu gifiun iman na idiskonso na honum. Hana freresku yantihu. Hagigya jugi dinansi na tsalan. Put inaanya. Asay na hahasujo girainommo. At suka mamumukat jugi hemhum na kanyada. Taja tayla jimaanyahu. Sa gaya gihaw gifiunhu. Unggogo ti ibaston mo. Nimunan na ijo animo. Asay na hahasujo girainommo. Umplanta ilamasa gimenohu. Gimenan iman ininiguhu. Umpalay lonya iluhu. Ja itasohu esta machutsuda. Iminaulika janiminoasi tumatitijizo todilina lohu. Ja baisaga gigima isayna. Giman mamayla siya nasakkan. Asay na hasujo girainommo. Tafan manojo mismo na palabras niya fanagwihit isay nata. Tatammo minigay gaw gila. Tapan manojujud. Todo na sinya na tata jantay hiniko na jurus. Ekungog itinajujud ifamaguon mo siha ni unagang ginin estinalina la guato gijahagu na isiha inina minagov janpos. Se di siha na ufan malofan gilinibri gipetta ni finatay. Ja ufan la todi tempo jan todo imanyantos mo. Giadjo na inina niyong prometi sa Abraham, jan todo i-descendensyon niya gihinengi. Protehi todi man matay, gilin todi peligro. Jagwihi gimagas na haan in resurreksyon, jan premium, hat sa siya hulo, jan todi manyantos mo. Asi isiha no isaw niya siha, jan na isya ni tay hinik na linala girangom mo. Ing gagagahan ni este, ginin ni Kristo, isaynan mo mi. Amen. Dimuji manhenge santus kilus adora si jus namatai gui dichoso i antinigai gigifiun isen gofliun na libre dimuji manhenge isantus kilus adora si Diyos na matay Natan mo ko ni tayo hindi ko minagong niya asay na. Ja ufanaga gininagong. Ave Maria Purissima. Ave Maria Bula Hangras.
Si Jules Moss, si Polly Eric for your blessing and prayers. And now to deliver the welcoming remarks. Please welcome Honorable Jesse L.G. Allig, Mayor of Piti and President of the Mayor's Council of Guam. Please be seated.
Buenas Zanhafa Day. The Mayor's Council of Guam, together with the Governor and Lieutenant Governor, welcome all of you to the 79th Guam Liberation Memorial Ceremony. You might wonder why the mayors are always involved with liberation festivities. Well, our local law mandates our council to organize these annual events, and we are grateful for the partnership of the governor, the lieutenant governor, the chief justice, the speaker, and of course, our vivacious Guam Visitors Bureau. Most importantly, we welcome our Manyayna of the greatest generation. Without you, we would not be here. Si Diyos maasi, pudi sakripisyon nido, gidurante ni tiempon gera. O lara mohon na si Diyos, hagiha mo na ilinala nido. Za pwede habendi si Hamzu, nui maulik na bida. Za ni paz, za ni ginayza, ginengwita ha mismo. At this ceremony, we invite you to reflect and remember our Guam history that has created a Chamorro people of faith and resilience. Many suffered and perished at the hands of imperial forces. The conflicts we endure today do not pale in comparison to the torture and persecution they endured. This greatest generation of Chamorros has taught us to weather life's storms with forbearance and forgiveness, with heartfelt peace and charity. Pues nihi ta espihay empeño para tafan agwaita, para tafan afamaulik, para tatogu ite tu imangilis zono como un familia san un rasan Chamorro. Este gui sempre itinituhun itsalan ininauta para tafan matu kiminakong. Welcome to the commemoration of our past and the celebration of our future. Happy Liberation Day, Guam.
Thank you, Mayor Alec. And now to deliver the special remarks, please welcome the Honorable Lourdes A. Leon Guerrero, Governor of Guam, Imagahagin Guahan.
Sidus Masi Poli. Buenas dan Hafaday. Today is more than a day of celebration. It is a day of reflection. And we start at the very beginning, the fateful day that started it all. On December 8, 1941, our people were in prayer, right here in Hagåtña, paying homage to our Santa Maria and Comelin. Among them, and the many, was 6-year-old Carmen Artero Casper Bauer. She was dressed as an angel and holding her basket of petals for the annual procession when the chaos ensued. Mass was abruptly interrupted by the sound of planes. No, they weren't the Pan American planes that our people were used to hearing. Our island was under attack by the Imperial Japanese Army. Forced out of their homes and marched into concentration camps, our peaceful island home was now a war zone. And while time heals most wounds, our Manamku carry with them the burden of these painful, tragic memories. For their fight, for their unshakable faith, and for their relentless will to survive, we call them Guam's greatest generation. They forged forward despite the fear and uncertainty of what tomorrow would bring, and tomorrow did come. That day was July 21st, 1944. Prayers were answered when American military forces began their campaign to retake our island, marking the beginning of the end. We saw the 3rd Division of Marine Corps land in our Assen Park. We saw the 1st Provincial Marine Brigade land to the south, and the 77th Army Infantry came into Guam along with the Air Forces. The end of occupation, the end of oppression, and the end of the war for the people of Guam. It is that victory that we celebrate today and has celebrated now for 79 grateful years. We thank the brave service members who liberated our island, the scores of United States sailors, soldiers, and Marines who braved through the barrages of shell fire as they began their fight to free over 20,000 Chamorro people. We thank these liberators and the men and women in uniform who serve us proudly today. I am very honored and humbled by the presence of one of the thousands of liberators that came to Guam. I'd like to again recognize and especially give a grateful thank you to Irvin Ward, accompanied by his son, Adam. Irvin was 21 years old when he came to Guam. He is now 99 years old. But don't let age fool you. I spent about 45 minutes with Irvin yesterday, and his memory of the war, his memory of coming to Guam was as vivid as it happened the day he arrived. He talked about landing. He talked about the 30 days that he had to travel to Guam in a ship. And he landed in that ship. He is a mechanic for the airplanes. And he gave me a very detailed information about the airplanes that left from Tinian to Japan. He was very, very vivid in his description. But what he most remembered about was the people of Guam. He remembered the love of our people. He remembered the generosity and the welcoming of the people. He remembered the way the houses were built. He talked about thatched roof. And he said to me, Governor, it is an amazing progress that Guam has made over this last 79 years. Irvin, we thank you so much for your sacrifices and your efforts. And we want you to come back again next year. We also honor our Manaina, like Carmen Artero Casper-Bauer, a most distinguished war survivor who at just 6 years young lived to tell her story. She also created a legacy of her own as a healer and my colleague as a nurse in our community. And then my colleague also as a senator in Guam. Carmen, Zantodu Hamzu, ni manlalala, ni mo experiencia igera. Utunguha naman masapin Hamzu, utunguha naman maot nyo hamzu mas kiseya Ches 4, 5, 6, 7 anos sa hamzu lo hasuisti an tisinya ho humano pa idzamzu hafa na klasin nilatla adzu Zotungo ha o lokwe kontra historian tatahu and historian nahu ni pudi tempun gera hungan bula man ataka bula man adak bula man paki bula man reg ifa malawan lo gostahu si pali iset monya gini giegaan hafalenya si pali letnya si pali na gefli i enemoko letnya si pali asi todi disiay man baba letnya si pali na maski saya man pinitihit maski saya man maot nyohit lo maila zatafan unu na tauto maila zata asii todi disya ibabania gizahita pes hafa pagu man bidadata man gos gangsit pagu zanit Japan sa hafa sa hamzu ni man amku in asii zusya itauto sa lenya si pali anti un asii ikilis danu tipat gunzu uso hasu eno na kwentus zaan man hahanawin mo na gininalata hasu azi ikwentus pali pes malago zu mas behu sangan undang kulu na si Zeus masi za nagradescent mizum hami ginin hamzu hami timan gaigi gitiampung gera lo leku naman piniti haam lokwe an hingok historian mizu pur hamzu ni man amku ni unai ham papa todi disya itiningo mizu. Pur itiningo mizu ni man honesta. Pur itiningo mizu ni man generous. Pur itiningo mizu ni guaiza todo. Ifamaguon iman amku todo disya tau-tauta. Zapur hamzu naman gagi ham taigwini pagu. Pur hamzu na manggagi ham ni mas passport. Pud hamzu na manmalik ininala mami mona. Pes gini ni kurason mami, zan todo hami ni tauto Guam, si Zeus maasi. Pud todo isakrifisan mizo, zan todo igunay zan mizo ni hami i tauto Guam and i islakta. Biba manam to! Viva liberation! Dan viva todos os man motto para hunafan librehit. Viva!
So Zeus Maasi, Governor. And now to give us insight into what life was like, we are so honored to have the Honorable Mrs. Carmen Artero Kasperbauer, a retired nurse, former senator, and war survivor. Give her a round of applause.
Buenas todos Sanzu. Gov magovo la za magovo za unayo agradecimiento governor then todan the mayor's council nen paisindu pabay sangan istoryaho pudigera. I'll translate. I thank you, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, and all Mayor's Council for inviting me and asking me to share my story of the war. And I hope that through my story, we will find healing and love and peace among all people, because that's the only way. Love for Jesus, love for God through Jesus is all that we can achieve happiness. And now I'll begin. On this 79th anniversary of the liberation from enemy occupation on our island, I cannot help but remember that it was a time of fear, uncertainty, and survival for the Chamorro people living on Guam. Good morning, everyone. Maulik na ogaan. Thank you for allowing me to share some of my personal history with you this morning. Guahu si Katmin Atero Kaspabauer, Familia Natero Zangkitaan. It is indeed an honor to be here today with you. Before I begin presenting my personal testimony, I hope you would first permit me to share that while living through the atrocities, anxieties, and pain of war, there was an overwhelming compulsion within my heart to extend the critical importance of forgiveness and compassion. Very early Monday morning, 8th of December, 1941, my oldest sister, Tita, and I, she was 7, I was 6, walked hand in hand with our Papa to the Ganya Cathedral, dressed as angels, carrying our basket of beautiful flowers. It is the Fiesta of the Immaculate Conception. It's a holy day of obligation for Guam. Mama had to stay home to care for our 4 other younger brothers and sisters. Virgie was just born, not even 4 or 5 weeks. I remember clearly that at the beginning of Mass, we heard the drone of airplanes overhead. I thought it was Pan Am and wanted to go outside to see it. But Tita said, "Quieto, keep still." But I still wanted to go look. So Tita said, "Quieto, pamadkilo patot mo." But I said, "Lo bulan na Pan Am. Malago bili sa bulan na Pan Am." And so I said, "But there's so many Pan Am and I want to go see all the Pan Am." So she elbowed me and said, "Be quiet." And then a man came out to Bishop Olano, who was saying the Mass, and he stopped the Mass and the 2 of them were whispering. The 2 men were talking in whisper while the planes were flying, many planes were flying above us. And then there was a loud explosion heard from far distance. Bishop Olano urged us to return to our homes right away because the Japanese were invading Guam. Tita and I were holding hands and crying. We could not find Papa, and we were so scared. Then we saw our Auntie Ana, Regis. She was holding her high heels in one hand, and her mantilla was falling off her head. And even though we're scared and crying, we started pointing at her and laughing at her because she looked ridiculous holding her high heels and her mantilla falling off her face. And then we looked at all the women were like that and crying, "Ay, Sus Santa Maria." And so then she found us and took us. She was holding, us. She took us home and said that Papa had to leave to take care of Mama and the other children. As we were running from the cathedral to our home, and by the way, my home is right around here before the war. As she was holding a hand and we were running, a plane came swooping down and we got so scared that we ran under somebody's house because In those days, many houses were on stilts. And I got so scared that when we ran down under that house, I landed on top of a big turtle. And I got so scared because I fell on top of a big turtle. But then after the plane left, we left, and Antiana took us home. From there, my dad, we found him and his mom in the jitney with all our belongings, and they were just waiting for us. Santiana helped us got onto the jitney, and then my dad drove us to Tokguak, which is now NCS, or Nictang. And that is where we lived for the whole duration of the war. And that's where my dad, at the end, was Phong Thuy. As we were living there, there was an American soldier that hid in the jungle, U.S. Navy radioman George Street. He was being helped and kept hidden by many Chamorro people. When Thuy finally made it up north, my father hid him in a cave way up high on a very steep cliff for almost 2 years until Thuy successfully signaled the American destroyer at the end of the war, and they rescued him. After that, Papa was trying to get us to Maningon. Thuy was this is at the end of the war, but he could not find the bull to pull the cart. Then 2 men came to our house and told Papa that they had to take our family to the Japanese headquarters so we could be compensated for all the food that they had taken to feed the Japanese troops. Papa did not believe them because at that point the Americans were already bombing the Japanese. So Papa threatened them with a gun and our dogs, and they left. Then we took our bundle of clothes and provision and whatever else we could carry and climbed to the steep cliff to where Thuy was hiding, and we hid there. We could hear the Americans bombing all over above us, and we just kept praying and thought, we will all die. We're all gonna die. After many days hiding in the cave, we heard my cousin Jesus yelling to us that the Americans had arrived, and he said, my father is his godfather, and he said, no, man mati Americano, the Americans are here. And my papa took the gun and aimed it at him, and he said, Undadagizo, you're lying to me, and you're just trying to trick the Japanese to kill us instead of you down there. And he said, so he made the sign of the cross, and he said, honest to God, Timandadagio, Astagay dos Americano. Honest to God, I'm not lying. Here are 2 Americans right here with me. And then my papa looked at the 2 soldiers, and then I knew very well that it was not Japanese, because the smell of Japanese soldier in the war was different from the American soldiers' sweat. So then I knew that as a child, I thought, oh, okay, so we're not in danger of the Japanese. So then the 2 men radioed the ship to tell them to stop bombing, because at that time the American invasion started down south and they were moving up north. And we are now, I'm talking about us hiding up north in past Dedido going toward Jigo. So the war was, proceeding up north to take over the island. And so when the men we were really scared because the ship was bombing and you could hear them going boom and then all over on top of us, and they're bombing up north. And then we also have airplanes shooting down, and some airplanes are just dropping bombs. So we had to find a way to dodge all these bullets that are coming at us. And all we did was pray and pray. But then when my cousin Jesus yelled that the Americans have arrived, my dad met two of the Americans. They radioed the ship to tell them to stop bombing our area until they could lead us out to safety. At that moment, my mother asked one of the soldiers what day it was because we had been hiding in the jungle and couldn't keep track of time. He told her it was August 8th. She came laughing and crying, hugging me, saying, "Mommy, Mommy, today is your birthday." So we got rescued August 8th up north on my birthday. I will never forget that. I turned 9 years old then at that time. As we went down the cliff, I remember that on the right side, there were a lot of dead American soldiers. And to the left, there were a lot of dead Japanese soldiers. Some were hanging in the trees. The Americans drove us to Pigo Cemetery, which was into Camp Bradley, an internment facility during this time. We could not return to our home in Agana because it was completely destroyed. So we moved to Tutuhan, which is now Agana Heights, after it was cleared of enemies. And we lived on our Cruz family property until my dad bought a piece of land from Tatampepe Cruz, and that's where we lived. And that's our home now, because we don't have a home anymore in Agana. Forgiveness and compassion come only with understanding. And in order for us to achieve a true and deep sense of understanding, we must first submit to the realization that humanity is fickle. It is not always going to be perfect. It is not always going to be empathetic. And it is not always going to be fair. We will come upon bridges whereupon we will either have the freedom to choose or be forced to cross, despite what we may be waiting on the other side. I believe that while we, the Chamorro people, were forced into treacherous circumstances, so were the enemy soldiers. I will not philosophize about that. Rather, I will illustrate with personal experience. During the war, more than 80 years ago, in my home, in this village in Agana, I remember a knock at our door. Though we were living in Togwag, we were given permission to come to our house in Agana for the beginning of the war. My mom answered the door and began speaking in English, to whom I will soon discover was a Japanese Navy warship captain. He was walking around Hagåtña and stopped at our house because he saw painting we had on our porch. He discerned that they were from Europe. He had similar paintings at his home in Japan. In their conversation, the Japanese captain told my mother that he had graduated from Cornell University in New York. When he returned to his home country of Japan, he married and was drafted into the military. He and his wife had two beautiful young children, a boy and a girl. He told us that he did not want to go to war against America because he loved America, and he and his family had many friends in America, but he was forced into this position. There was nothing he could do. I remember that he took out pictures of his wife and children and showed them to us. He was brave not to sound emotional, but I remember seeing tears roll down his cheek. He told my mother that he did not think he would ever see his wife and children again. War is terrible. We should all learn to work together, to love, understand, and tolerate each other. in order to live in peace and harmony. We're all children of God, no matter what country or island we are from, whether we're rich or poor, literate or illiterate, we are all children of God, and we should learn how to love one another and help each other. In conclusion, I would like to share wisdom learned through my war experience. Very simply, living in hate will destroy you. Living in love and peace, that is what will truly liberate you. Happy Liberation Day to all of you. Dank u wel, alsjeblieft.
Thank you, Mrs. Arturo Casper Bauer, for your courage and strength in recalling those difficult times. And now to sing a prayer of St. Francis. Maestro Ryan Kayabyab. Please welcome back to the podium Dr. John Rivera and Mrs. Abigail Rivera. They will be accompanied by Mr. Frankie Gutierrez on keyboard.
That
Thank you once again, Dr. Rivera, Mrs. Rivera, Mr. Gutierrez, for your wonderful song and your amazing gift. And now, the wreath-laying presentation. Our honor guard is provided by the United States Marine Corps Base, Camp Blas. We ask all military and public safety personnel to render proper salute when given by the honor guard. Gentlemen should remove their hats, and all non-military personnel should place their hands over their hearts. We begin with Asinan, presented by Mayor's Council of Guam President and PT Mayor Jesse Allig, along with Liberation Queen Malaya Rose Leon Guerrero, the 79th Liberation Royal Courts. The Asinan Memorial honors the memory of those who suffered at Camp Asinan, the Pago Bay area, and Zotnya. Many residents suffered cruelties, humiliation, and torture, and some lost their lives. And now, the Menengen Memorial wreath, presented by Zotnya Mayor Bill Kenga, along with Colonel Joaquin and Mary Torrey. This memorial remembers the site of the former concentration camp. Menengen is a valley located between the villages of Zotnya and Telefofu. Thousands of people, from infants to the elderly, were forced to march to the camp, coming as far north as Jigo and as far west as Hagen. The people were herded along by soldiers wielding bayonets, who were noted for their many accounts of cruelty. Thousands of Chamorros and other inhabitants of Guam were forced to march to these camps after the Japanese caught news that American forces were moving in. The camps were catalysts for heinous acts such as rape, beheadings, executions, and disappearances. And now, Marine 5th Field Service Depot, presented by Mongmong Totu Mighty Mayor Rudy Paco, along with Mr. and Mrs. Manabusin. This memorial honors the site where the U.S. Marine Forces Pacific were based. By September 1944, the 5th Field Depot Supply Service, Fleet Marine Forces began establishing a field storage depot east of Agana for shipping and receiving material. The depot included warehouse and open storage areas, repair and maintenance shops for automotive and heavy vehicles, signal and engineering equipment and material, as well as housing. We now present to you the Calagwag wreath, presented by Barrigada Mayor June Bloss and Vice Mayor Jesse Bautista, along with Colonel Joe Mofnis and Mr. Frank Beneventi. The Calagwag Memorial honors the area which had farms and homes and those who performed forced labor. Many area residents suffered and were killed in Calagwag and Tizon during World War II. And now, Asu Mangilao, presented by Mangilao Mayor Alan Ngakta and Vice Mayor Kevin Delgado, along with Senora Rosa Hilgeman. Senora Rosa Hilgeman. Senora Rosa Cruz Helgeman. This memorial honors the brave men and women from the area who were forced to labor near the Imperial Japanese Army radio camp. The memorial is near a foot trail war where victims marched to Jigo. Thank you, Senora Rosa Cruz Helgeman. And now the Inalahan wreath, presented by Inalahan Mayor Anthony Chargaloff, along with Senora Teresita Meno Paulino. This memorial honors the village which was host to several concentration and internment campsites. Many residents were killed, some disappeared and were never found again, while others were imprisoned and threatened with death. And now the presentation of the Asin Landing wreath, presented by Asin Maina Mayor Frankie Salas, along with Senora Cynthia Terlahi. This memorial honors the patriots who served. When U.S. Armed Forces retook the island from the Imperial Japanese forces in 1944, they deployed landing craft and machines as they bombed beaches at Asin. Their hope was to secure the village of Asin before entering other villages to liberate them. And now the presentation of the Tinta wreath, presented by Malessu Mayor Ernest Chargaloff, along with Senora Teresita Cruz Paulino. The Tinta Memorial honors the Tinta Massacre site on July 15, 1944, 6 days before the island was liberated in World War II. 30 men and women from the village of Malessu were gathered. 16 were killed, and the others were left for dead. And now the presentation of the Faha wreath, presented by, once again, Malessu Mayor Ernest Chargaloff, along with Senora Asuncion Lazaro Cruz. The Faha Memorial honors the 30 native Chamorro men who were slaughtered here on July 16, 1944, by members of the Imperial Japanese Army. The men who were killed here were rounded up for a work crew. Why they were killed is unclear, as there were no survivors to explain what happened. And now the presentations of the Hasselhaget and Fenna wreath. Which is presented by Haget Mayor Kevin Siswico and Vice Mayor Christopher Ferrin, along with Senora Julia Villagomez. This memorial remembers the Fenna Caves Massacre, which occurred on July 23, 1944, shortly after American troops invaded the island of July 21, when Imperial Japanese Army soldiers killed more than 30 young men and women from Haget and Sumai with grenades and bayonets in the caves near Fenna Lake, raping many of the women before killing them. In some accounts, it is reported that 66 others barely survived the massacre. And now the Sumai wreath-laying presentation by Santa Rita Sumai Mayor Dale Alvarez, along with Senor Juan T. Guzman. Also, the Liberation Queen will be presenting the wreath as well. She is a resident of Santa Rita Sumai. This memorial remembers where the attack in Guam on December 8, 1941 began. Sumai was one of the busiest commercial places on the island. The attack marked the beginning of the Japanese forces' invasion. And now the presentation of the Taguian wreath-laying, presented by Jigo Mayor Anthony Sanchez and Vice Mayor Loreto Leones, along with Senora Jovita Meherada. The Taguian Memorial remembers the massacre in 1944 by Imperial Japanese Army soldiers of 45 native Chamorro men. The men were from 15 to 76 years old and were dressed in civilian clothes. This beheading is the largest known single act of violence by the Imperial Army. And now, the presentation of the 1944 memorial wreath, presented by the representatives of the U.S. military branches and their senior enlisted, led by Rear Admiral Gregory C. Huffman, Commander Joint Region Marianas, This memorial is dedicated to Americans who served in the armed forces and as civilians during World War II. It recognizes the ways Americans served, honors those who fell, and recognizes the victory they achieved to restore freedom and end tyranny around the globe.
All right, everybody, you continue to watch KUM's continuing coverage of the 79th Liberation Day festivities. You saw there a very, very moving, emotional ceremony as many members of war survivors, many of them war survivors themselves, still with us and being honored by our island community. You just saw there in that last shot many members of the military. You saw there some very high-ranking enlisted members as well as a couple officers going there and saluting, literally, their brothers in arms that came before them on that day on July 21st, 1944, when United States Marines took to the beach down in Pidi, now known to us in the civilian community as the War in the Pacific Memorial Park, down there, taking the beach, liberating from Guam from 3 years, beg your pardon, of Japanese occupation at that point. Much more coming up throughout the day. We want to take this opportunity to tell you that you want to stick with KUM for your Liberation Day coverage. In addition to the ceremonies today, those continue downtown. There are many more things to watch out for. At 2:30 in the afternoon, there is a big block party that is happening. It starts at about 2 in the afternoon downtown in Hagåtña. The community is invited. Now remember, Liberation Day is not only a day when we reflect, when we say Sidus Masi and thank you, we also celebrate. We celebrate for the gift of freedom, for the freedom that has been provided to us. And for those of us, my Nana, my grandmother's generation reminded us of what it was like to go through those times when the atrocities of war were something that they dealt with on an almost daily basis. So there is an opportunity for us to celebrate, especially the young generation, and learn from those who came before us. So please make sure to participate. It is a community event that's going to happen in Hagåtña at 2:30 p.m. Entertainment kicks off, and then live music throughout the evening. The governor is going to come back. You saw she gave wonderful remarks there, talking about the impacts of liberation on her and her administration, giving them in our own native tongue in Chamorro, very beautifully delivered by our island's beloved Magahaga. There are many things to do, and we want to invite you to go to KUM.com right now because we have the full list. There's a lot to do today. There's this whole agenda. Once again, the community is invited, so make sure to go downtown. It is at the Guam Museum where Nick was. Fireworks will begin. Now, this is key. Of course, it is July 21st today. Fireworks will begin precisely at 7:21 this evening. Now, that's after the news. We're going to bring you everything up to 7 p.m., so you've got about 21 minutes to go down there and see the fireworks. You could probably see them as far as Tamuning, but go down there, check them out in person. It's going to be absolutely amazing. If you cannot, or if you are joining us all over the world right now on YouTube or on Facebook, make sure to watch us because Nick Delgado is going to live stream the fireworks ceremony for you. Whether you've been on Guam your entire life, whether you were born here then moved away or went to college or were stationed for military duty, or whether you just moved here last week, we are all Guamanians. That includes you. And this is our opportunity to rejoice in the beauty and the benefit, as I said, of liberation 79 years ago today. So we say thank you, Sidus Masi, to everyone who paid some sort of price. The war survivors themselves, the people that went through the war, our liberators themselves. You saw some of them came back. And even though this year we were not able to celebrate in the way that we traditionally do with the parades and the floats and gathering downtown. Nonetheless, amazing. It's a beautiful, beautiful ceremony that was happening right now downtown. And again, the block party is happening tonight. We continue to bring you coverage, so make sure to check us out on all of our social media platforms at KUM News throughout the day. And today is a beautiful day. And with that, we leave you for this afternoon. I'm Jason Salas saying thank you so much for watching and have a wonderful Liberation Day. Viva Liberation Guam.